Can anyone get there with enough practice?
To reach the highest level, it's really, really difficult.
1 out of 200.
Current performance doesn't necessarily mean future performance, and it doesn't necessarily mean this player has talent. Understanding the player's story, how much practice they've had.
What's the maximum age?
Your nephew might have a shot. How can you develop that by age 4 alone?
The other players that want to take his place.
What is the average salary of a Premier League player? Karim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Question off the bat. Can anyone, so let's say I have a nephew who's interested in football and wants to become a professional football player, wants to play for the biggest teams, you know, Man City, Liverpool. Can anyone get there with enough practice, or does it take a certain type of person?
Hard question to answer, because what you're doing is you're trying to predict the future of a person. But the easy answer to say is everybody can improve and become a good football player with the right type of practice, with the right type of environment, with the right mindset. And I think from a coaching perspective, a former like someone who trains or coaches people, those are the tools that we have to improve people's performances and develop them to reach whatever potential they have. But again, it comes back to the topic is how do we identify potential, and are we missing out on potential, and is your nephew has that potential, can we recognize it in him, and then can we give him the right environment to reach that potential. So to answer your question, it's like everybody can become a really good football player given that they train properly and have a good environment, but to reach the highest level, it's really, really difficult, because I'll just talk about a little bit about my background, where I used to work in England. They used to tell us in the academy that 1 out of every 200 players that come into the academy reach the Premier League.
1 out of 200?
Yeah, it was like a 0.5%.
That's pretty low.
That's really low, but that's to the Premier League, so that's the highest level in the UK.
Yeah.
So we don't want to like ignore all of the 199 players that come into the academy. So that's why you have all these different leagues in the system, and you have different leagues outside the system, which is in different countries. So for those who don't make it, they should have like a type of safety net where you can catch them, and then they can go to their own level, which is like a League One or a Championship, or they come to the UAE and they play. It meets them at their level. So to go back to what we were saying, is like to reach the Premier League, it's really, 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 really difficult. You have to be a certain type of player, certain type of person, certain type of background.
Is there a certain type of intelligence behind football? Because there is like a theory, you know, very little is understood about the brain, but there's a theory that there are different types of intelligence. One type of intelligence is the kinetic intelligence, which is your brain and your body are very, very well in tune and connected. So do you think that it's kind of like an IQ score, where some people analytically score very high? In football, there's also something like a football IQ.
That's a really good question, and it's hard to answer exactly if there is, because I don't think there is a genetic thing like you have a football genetic gene or something like that. And for the most part, I think it can be trained. Do some players have it a bit more than others? Naturally, probably. But it's hard to measure, because you can't, pick out his brain and see where that gene is or something like that. It's hard, but there's no IQ test other than them playing the game and watching the game and analyzing their game and seeing how they communicate in that environment, how they perceive different things, what cues they take in. So that's the research. It's like a player goes on the pitch, can we see what he looks at, how many times he looks at it, the quality of information he takes in. But most of the time, those things can be trained in good environments with good coaches. So
the thing is, you're touching on a really, like, there's so many topics within that. For example, like talent, it seems to me that is just, it's a visual thing, not a measurable thing. The training, you can measure. You can see that, okay, there's progress. With the talent, you're, in a sense, to Tarek's point, you can't really, you can't say that this person has that, and like in writing. It's almost just visual. So how does that dictate how someone can move up to the Premier League, for example?
So to go on the topic of potential, and like you said, it's like, how do you spot it? Or it's hard to spot, or it's something that you can see, or you think you can see at least. And that's where maybe as people who go and scout players, we think we're seeing potential, but what we're really seeing is maybe something else.
What is that something else?
So to give like a bit of context, current performance is what we're seeing, what the player is doing currently. But current performance doesn't necessarily mean future performance, and it doesn't necessarily mean this player has talent or potential. Because, for example, if you watch an under 14 game, within that under 14 game, each kid or boy is like maturity, his biological maturity is probably different to each other. So one guy's 14, but really he's 16. One guy's 14, but really his body is 12. So what we're actually seeing is not talent. We're seeing one player being more dominant physically than the other.
Okay.
So what we're spotting isn't future potential. We're spotting current performance based on how physically he's doing in that situation. So he can compete better. Again, to review what I said, potential is something unseen.
Yeah.
And it can be a consequence of current performance, but most of the time it's not. It's something that manifests later in the future, and it's hard to spot.
Okay.
So
This is very interesting, and it seems there's a very strong focus on the analytical side of the game, because, which makes sense. Ultimately, you need to be able to verify and measure certain things so that you can justify, buying players, right?
100%.
And scouting.
Yes.
I like the point around talent, because it's almost something you can describe.
Yes.
And that doesn't help people that want numbers, right?
Yes.
They want so has football, let's maybe take this differently.
Sure.
Is it too analytical now?
I think it's important to use those analytical tools, especially as we get higher up the pyramid. So the closer they are to the first team or in the first team, those tools are kind of useful.
Okay.
Because they might reveal to you something about that player that wasn't be able to see with the eye. But when we go down maybe to the youth team, when players are still developing and it's harder to predict because they're not in the first team yet. So they don't have the skills yet. Maybe the type of analytical tools that we use might look a bit different.
Okay.
So it's not the analytical tool, it's not the objective tool, but understanding the player's story and where he's come from and what adversity he's faced can tell you a lot about maybe how he can develop.
Character.
So for example, if a player is performing averagely compared to his peers, but he's facing a lot of difficulty at home, the fact that he can still perform at a decent level given his adversity shows that if you were to remove that adversity, he might flourish. You know what I mean? So it's like, what's the story behind the player? What adversity does he face? And can we identify the things that are preventing him from reaching his highest performance? And then you take all those informations and you say, this player has high potential. Nice. He might be like they call it like a whispering talent, like a player that doesn't stand out immediately, like a Kylian Mbappe or something like that, where at 15, 16, he's already the best player in the world or something like that. He might be someone who goes on overlooked. So maybe he's very small, maybe he has low confidence, maybe he comes from a difficult family background. All those things are interfering with his performance and his potential. If we can fix those things, let's see how he can develop. So we're trying to predict the future in a way that we can,
So for someone who looks for talent, you're scouting for new talent for the team. Do you have to dig into every person's background to understand where they've come from so that you can understand where they can eventually go? Like how much practice they've had, what's their life like at home, all of that?
Yes. So ideally, yes. Do we have the time to do all those things? Probably not.
Yeah.
But what you said is really, really key is how much practice they've had. So that's another limiting factor for somebody. Let's keep on the same person. That person who's maybe small, who has difficult family life, who's low on confidence, say he's practiced half the time than his peers, but he's still performing well. It's another indicator that this guy has a lot of potential. Because if given that he had a lot of training time, maybe he would be better than all of them. But he has had less. But he's still kind of competing with them, although he's not the best. So all those factors that you mentioned, family, training time, how he's performing currently, all of them can give us a picture of potentially how far a player can go. But it's really, really important to say that most of the time as a scout or as a coach or something, we have to be humble and say, we're probably going to get it wrong.
Really?
We're probably going to get it wrong.
Okay.
80% of the time. The 20% that we get right is good. We try to move the 20 to 25. And with the 80% that we get wrong, let's try and create a safety net or so we don't lose them out the system completely. Maybe they move from your club to another club and still get opportunity to develop.
Yeah.
So good football countries with good structure have that okay, maybe we missed out on 20 players. Let them go to another team, another system, and they can continue to develop. And that's how you get players like Jamie Vardy. That's how you get players like Ian Wright and many players who fell off the system or came late into the system because they had the opportunity to continue to develop. They made it at the end. Yeah.
So my nephew, how old, what's the maximum age that someone could start training to become a football player to get to the highest level of play?
What's the latest age?
Yeah. If he's 11 years old and he hasn't really trained, is that too late?
Again, I'll speak about England just all because it's what the country that I've worked in, as well as the UAE. But for example, you guys all watch the Euros, right?
Yeah.
You guys saw the England team. They did well. They did okay. So I think from the 26 players, there was like an analysis of when they started playing football in the system. When did they enter academy systems? Okay. I think it was like 22 of the 26, or like the large majority, all entered at the pre-academy stage, which is like 8 years old. So all of them started in the system at 8 years old, almost all. With a few exceptions, which is clear, it's important to say that a few exceptions started maybe at 10. Okay. Maybe some started at 11. Maybe some entered at 14.
14 even?
Yeah, but in that time they probably were playing in different clubs around the world, in their area. If, for example, your nephew starts at 11, the chances that he can still make it, but he has missed a lot of development time compared to the player who starts at 8.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So maybe he just is a late bloomer, or he's someone that's, he comes into the system late. But that doesn't mean that like early specialization, which is like starting at 8, is the only way. So if your nephew played basketball and he played maybe other invasion sports like football, he might pick up some skills that when he does start at 11 might help him, like the spatial awareness, like moving into space, receiving. So all those skills that he developed by playing sports earlier in a different type of sport can help him. So he has like a diverse type of pathway into football.
Nice.
It's a great point, because I don't know if you read the book Range or heard about it.
No.
It's really fascinating for viewers who want to dig deep into this learning methods or learning styles. You spoke about early specialization.
Sure.
And that's a point in the book. The book references 2 examples: Nadal versus Tiger Woods.
Okay.
Tiger Woods is an example of a golf prodigy from age 2 all the way up. And golf is what they refer to as a kind learning environment. Is that the rules are fixed, you know what you need to do and how to practice. I think football is more of the other side, wicked learning environment. It's tricky, it's messy, it's hard to measure development early on.
100%.
But early specialization doesn't really matter, to your point, in a sense. And there are transferable skills
100%
that you take. I think Nadal played football and other sports before going into tennis.
Yes.
So that author cites those as examples. And it's interesting that you mentioned it in a sense. So like your nephew might have a shot.
He still has a chance. He still has a chance.
And you said it's messy about football. It's a good pun.
Exactly.
It's a good pun.
Without pun intended.
But
it's fascinating because of the learning curves and how players advance throughout the ages. So it's not essentially the summary. You don't really have to play football until age 8 with an obsession
100%
to kind of make it.
100%.
Okay.
But I'd like to ask you guys also, like in your backgrounds and in just maybe in your sports or in just observing life, when you think about yourselves or the people around you, maybe your nephew if you have one, or your younger brother or something like that, when you see him developing, what did you notice about his pathway that maybe stood out to you and maybe gave you an insight on how to develop like talent as well? What did you guys notice?
I guess having passion for something at a young age indicates that there's probably talent there as well.
Interesting, Okay, great.
I don't know if that is a rule, but usually when I find that when I observe someone being really passionate about something, when they're still in their very early formative years, very early adolescence, they probably have a knack for it.
Sure.
Generally, at least in my family, haven't seen anyone that has a very bad musical ear, for example, end up becoming someone who plays guitar. Usually my cousins that play guitar or that sing really loved it from when they were young. And I think it's similar with something like football. I don't have anyone in my family who's good at sports. It's probably why I suck at sports. but it's probably the same thing. So if you both probably, because you've both been really into football, I'm sure that since you were kids, there was something about it that clicked for you both.
Sure.
And I know Sami, in terms of like the amateur circle that he plays with, is a really good player. Like he has a knack for it.
I can vouch for that as well.
And so you're probably similar. So that's what I feel like from my perspective.
I have a different take because I've worked a little bit with Manchester City. I've done some coaching focused on very young children, boys and girls under the age of 6. And to your point a little bit, while I do agree generally that passion follows talent, but sometimes you can have that character of passion without the talent, and maybe the talent follows. Could be, again, just my opinion. But I've seen a child, so I have a child that weirdly I can't forget because he was so committed to the game at age 4.
And 4,
I swear, and just killing it, like absolutely killing it, tackles, assists, scoring, running all over. And I'm like, this kid is like the maturity of 8 with the 4-year-olds. So I felt that like, okay, that to me was like, there's natural talent. You know, like how can you develop that by age 4 alone, unless your dad is like the father of Tiger Woods, just throwing footballs at you. So I've seen that, and I have 2 nephews. One of them is very passionate about football. The other is a little bit younger, but like almost before he could walk, he was looking at the ball and trying to kick the ball. So I saw the contrast there. You know, like sometimes you have a talent and your talent lights up your path. And you just go for it.
100%.
And you might be lazy. You might need to develop the personality. You know, you might need to develop the passion. And the other is like you have the passion and then you're just trying to work hard to, you know, marry it with, that. So it's tough.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think that everyone with a passion for something means they're really talented at it. But I do think that for you to be talented, you're probably likely also going to be passionate. Generally.
Yeah, because it makes sense even from an ego point of view, right? Is that if you know that you're good at a young age, you can either like really continue playing, or you reach a point where you might just become lazy. And you go like, I've made it. So it's a dangerous.
It is a dangerous thing.
Two-sided coin or something like that. But it's interesting about you spoke about the cutoff age. So there is hope. For children that haven't specialized. Do you have any points around that?
No, but I do. I'm interested to know, Karim, dead or alive, best football player?
Probably Messi, I have to say. I think he's the best from my generation, and from Ronaldo is very close. He's close behind, but
Ronaldo the Brazilian or Cristiano?
No, Cristiano Ronaldo. I think those are the 2 best in the world, and in the past and the present and everything. And I think we're really lucky to have had both of them at the same time. I don't know if future generations will be able to say the same. So, but I think I just have to say Messi, just because of him winning the World Cup and the things that he achieved, pushed it for me. But I do really like Ronaldo, and I love Ronaldo at the same time.
But you brought up a good point, because I think, so I'll tell you what I think after, but do you think the Messi-Ronaldo debate is even valid? You know, about who's better or who's, you know?
Is it valid? I think it is valid. I think if one didn't exist, then the other wouldn't exist as well. For some reason, they helped each other to become the best. I think the debate is really important for both of them to fuel their motivation to become even better. So I think it's a good debate, and it's valid, and it should exist. Although who wins or who comes first or second, I don't think it's important.
Same. I just think that in a sense, it's a useless comparison, because number one, position. Position, playing style is very different. And I think maybe the fallacy that Ronaldo doesn't have natural talent. People kind of refer to Ronaldo as a trained product.
100%.
Zlatan has said that, others have said it, and that Messi is pure natural. When Messi has been in the Barca regime since age 4. So he's a trained product as well.
Of course.
Yes, there are aspects that are maybe more natural, but they both have natural traits.
100%.
Maybe it's just that Ronaldo,
I think it's a perception thing.
You know,
it's a perception because of the style that the player has. Because Messi's style feels organic.
It does,
They call him natural, but then Cristiano's style feels very mechanical.
Like effective, and he just goes to score and gets numbers and stuff
efficient,
like that.
mechanical. They call him a product, but I think they're probably both extremely highly trained.
Of course, and highly motivated. And
I have heard from coaches about Ronaldo's work ethic and work discipline, though. Like he's unmatched in terms of his discipline.
No, absolutely, and we'll probably maybe get into that in in the sequel, just about like training and what it's required. But I think a lot of people talk about in the football sphere that Ronaldo has outtrained everybody. Like even like there's a famous story of him playing ping pong in one of the players' houses in Manchester, and he lost. A month later, he gets a trainer, invites everyone over, beats everyone again. You know, like he's just that competitive.
He's something's wrong with him. You know?
That is actually hilarious.
That's Jordan. Like that's almost Michael Jordan.
Yeah, he's got an obsession.
You know, like I have to beat you. You know, like I need to beat you. In any, you know, like flip a coin. Oh, okay. You know, like I'm gonna win.
So is it a different set of skills to be like someone who's a forward versus someone who's like center back?
For them,
very different.
For the most part, yes. It's a different set of like football actions. Like the central defender doesn't need to maybe focus on scoring goals versus the striker, who his main football actions that will define him are the goals that he scores and the shots that he takes and the actions he makes against other defenders. And maybe the strength of defenders, football actions are more to do with like tackling, pressing, of course passing as well. So yeah, the football actions would be all the same across all the players, but one emphasis would be for defenders, different, and one emphasis would be on strikers.
And for my nephew,
yes,
what's the easiest position to get into as a pro footballer?
Nice.
Like what should he be training, or what's the rarest? Like,
sure.
Yeah.
To be honest, there is no easy position for your nephew. To be honest, he's gonna have a challenge.
Are you saying that he's shit at
No, I'm saying I'm saying he's gonna be challenged at every step.
I like it.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Even if he's a goalkeeper, which maybe they have longer careers, or they peak later, or it's gonna be challenging for him.
Yeah.
It always be competitive, always be other players that want to take his place.
Because when I was a kid, at least, I felt like most people just wanted to be a striker. They want to score goals.
Yes.
Is that the case also when they get older, or do you see a lot of defenders coming in as like, I want to be a defender?
Sure. I think most kids just want to score goals. I guess in some countries maybe they, like in Italy, I know they love defenders, so maybe the kids want to be like Maldini or something like that.
Role models help.
Role models definitely help the culture. In England as well, some players would like to be like Lampard or something like midfielders. Gerrard or something like that. So yeah, each role model, each team, they have or country have like a direction of players, you know.
It leans too much towards scoring because again, this is maybe a bit psychological. The idea of you controlling the outcome, you writing the story. Is that like there's a very nice quote by Courtois, I think. He's like, a striker can miss 6 shots on target and then score a winning goal. It's fine. I can save 6 shots and concede a goal, and I'm the failure.
Sure.
So it's not equal. It's not, defending and attacking are not equal. 100%. You know, you can have an amazing game as a defender, and then one slip up, one nutmeg, and that's it. You're a meme.
You're a meme.
You know, but then the striker, they'll remember him for scoring. So there's a bit of the recency effect. I want to call it outcome bias as well. So there's a focus on doing versus preventing. Because if you're good at cleaning up, so to speak, in football, it's overlooked because there's no stats for he's such an amazing. He prevented.
I guess it's like almost an expectation that they prevent, and then when it doesn't happen, it's kind of like that's where the highlight becomes.
No, but it's also like, you don't see a lot of the things that occur that aren't that flashy.
Oh yeah, you don't.
You know, and it's just normal human nature. You know, like you'll see the goal because it's the highlight.
It's the thing that's
it's the score line. It's you know, your name, the pre-assist. You know, you have a goal and you have assist and you have pre-assist. That might be more important.
100%. 100%. Yeah, or the defender that's always in the right position to intercept the ball, but you didn't notice him most of the game or something like that. So
it's overlooked.
And it does come back to, again, something that we spoke about, where, you know, there is a perception bias, there is a outcome bias when it comes to scouting potential or watching football. So it does exist and something to be aware of for sure. For sure.
And even when we're aware of them, we still can't counter them fully.
Exactly.
Because, you know, we're like, you know that, you know, you're influenced by it and you'll notice it in your colleagues, but not in yourself.
Sure.
So there's that level of like audit that's required that people have to go like, okay, what's your scouting report? Okay, I'll check it and I'll verify.
100%.
Ultimately.
What is the average salary of a Premier League player?
I think they make a lot of money.
I think it's too late for us.
Well, I'm
cut-off age.
Yeah, very, very, very far beyond the cut-off age.
Sure.
But like, is it, you know, more than £200,000?
Some players, yes, they definitely make that. Yeah, the Premier League pay really good salaries.
Even for the bottom teams?
So for the youth teams, when I was working there, I can't remember their salaries. But yeah, some players at 18, they had nice cars or something like that, or they had a good, when they signed the pro contract, they get good money. So football is definitely a lucrative job. And it does definitely pays really, really well, yani.
But only at the highest level, or even in Championship and like Division 1, 2?
I think as you go down, it becomes less.
It
becomes a lot
but
less.
It's still a living.
It's still a good living.
Okay.
It's still a healthy living. To play football and to make a healthy, good amount of money to sustain you, yourself, and your family is a blessing for sure. Because it's so fun and it pays okay. And of course, there are hardships that football players do face, and it's something that we maybe forget. We look at them as players rather than people. And a lot of football players have many difficulties and many mental health issues, and just the difficulty of trying to be a player is in itself a really overwhelming experience for them. So it's good to look at players as people, and I think the best coaches in the world do that really well. One of the best coaches who definitely does that, although I haven't worked with him, just watching the interviews of the players that speak about him, is probably Carlo Ancelotti.